João Kiser from Millersville, Georgia. I came out when I was 16, and then I joined the military at 21, which was something I did not want to do because of the kind of macho culture that I grew up seeing. And I didn't want to put myself back in the closet because I knew that don't ask, don't tell was a thing then. I ended up joining because I briefly went to college. It got too expensive, and I moved back home. And it was like life with my father or find some way to get out. And the military was the best option. I ended up joining as a linguist, so being intel was a little bit different. The most difficult part was when I got my permanent duty station, which was Fort Hood in Killeen, Texas. From there, I deployed to Iraq and Kuwait. I didn't let people get close to me because, I didn't want them to know I was gay. I didn't want to lose my job because if I lose that, if you get kicked out for being gay under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, you essentially lose everything. And then at the midpoint, I think, of my deployment, it was about 6 months in or so, because out of a year, Don't Ask, Don't Tell was repealed. So at this point, you could be openly gay in the military and no one could do anything about it. So I joined Outserve, and then that was a group that helped get Don't Ask, Don't Tell repealed. It was a Facebook group. But after it was repealed, everyone was kind of like, oh, in the chats, where are you? Where are you? And so I saw a few people were I was at Kuwait at this time, so a few people were in Kuwait. So we were like, why don't we just meet? So we went to the MWR, which is like the rec center, essentially. There was I think 5 of us at the time. And Jeff was the main person who kind of coordinated this meetup. So I remember going and sitting next to him, and we were just kind of chatting. He was from Minnesota. His family was from Norway, and he spoke Norwegian and Swedish. So we started hanging out outside of the group because he was teaching me Swedish, and we just got closer. And I don't remember exactly when hanging out turned into dating, but he was an officer, and an officer in the National Guard, so it was different. I was active duty, so we could get away with having that sort of relationship, and people didn't ask him any questions. But he had his own they call it chews, a little trailer. I lived in a big tent with 50 people, so I'd kind of sneak off and hang out in his chew, and then we just kind of got closer. One time I actually spent the night. So we were just deployment dating. We're just when we saw movies and things like that, whatever, sometimes shows would come, we would go watch them together. He met some of my friends from the unit, I met some of his, so we dated for about 6 months. I remember one night in particular, I just gotten off work, we met up right outside the defect like we always did, and I remember sitting down, having what felt to me like a normal dinner, just chatting and stuff. But then he got kind of quiet towards the end of the dinner. He put our trays in the trash, and then he looks over, and takes my hand and pulls me to the side of the defect. And I was so I have something to tell you. I am going home soon. And I was like, well, when do you know? He's about 2.5 weeks or so. We kind of had this long, silent walk back to his chew, and then I remember going inside and hugging him and just being I don't want you to go. I remember just staying there all night, and I didn't care that I had to go back, didn't care if anyone knew where I was or not. I just kind of stayed with him all night. I remember the last day, the day before he left, because you go back really early in the morning. The hardest thing was getting up to go to work, and he's all the stuff was packed, and we had to say goodbye. 2 months later, I finally got orders to go home. When you get home, there's this whole ceremony on the field of your base where everyone, gets information, and then all your loved ones just kind of run out to you. So I was super excited at the thought of Jeff being there. But he wasn't able to be there. He was National Guard, so when he got back, he started his job again, and he just couldn't get the time off. Which sucked. But Jeff and I kind of got into little arguments about I was a little upset that he didn't come. So when I got home to Georgia, I was I don't know if I'm gonna go to Minnesota, because I was kind of talking myself out of my feelings for him. We kept having these conflicts about, when are we gonna see each other? And we kept fighting about it, and we ended up having this kind of big blowout, and then we kind of just stopped talking to each other. And I didn't hear from him for a while, and I was like, well, maybe I should reach out just to see. I remember scrolling on his Facebook page. I see, all these messages like, miss you. And then I saw this rest in peace one. I was like, so I ended up clicking on that profile and messaging them like what happened? And they ended up telling me Jeff passed away. And I was like, well, how? So then I found Jeff's sister, and she's like, oh, you're João. Because he had told his family about me, so that's why he wanted me to come so bad, because they were all anticipating meeting this person that he fell in love with while he was deployed. And she told me, one night he had a really bad headache, and went to sleep and just he didn't wake up. That was about a week or so after our big fight. I hated the fact that he died angry, and I told her this, and she was like, well, Jeff was the type of person that I guarantee you whatever he was upset about, he just let it go. Then I was like, I held on to it for too long, and I wish I hadn't, and I still wish I could have, I wish I chose to see him. But if I could do it all over again, even knowing the outcome, I would, because it was worth it. I met someone that made a really difficult period in my life fun. You never know how much time you may have with someone, so just enjoy people, whether it's friends, family, or significant others. Just, remember, time is precious and you never know when it's going to be gone.